at the dirt! If you've got a battalion of herbs this summer, I've got your back. We're making flavor bombs because no herb gets left behind. Well, as you can see, I've had a bumper crop of herbs here in Toronto. We had all that rain, and so they're doing really well. I call this my kitchen garden because I basically walk out of my kitchen and grab herbs for whatever I'm making. But I grow mint, particularly for the Canadian mojito, which I did in the cocktail video if you want to check that out. I also use a lot of mint in, recipes that use sort of, I don't know, a little bit of sweetness. I've got my Italian flat leaf parsley. I have oregano because I do an awful lot of Italian cooking. I have thyme just because I like to throw that in for a little bit of a different kind of a hit. And then I have 2 big pots of basil. I make a ton of basil and pesto, and we're going to show you how to do that in a minute. I also grow cilantro, and cilantro tends to bolt. So if you snip it and before it bolts, you can freeze it all year for using in the summer. And then of course I have rosemary, and I've got dill, and the dill seeds itself every year. So every so often there'll be like dill sticking out someplace in my garden. But there's my rosemary. I grow arugula because I love it in salads, or I make a pesto out of it. And I also have lemon balm, and I make that into a tea and sometimes smoke it. No, I'm kidding. I never smoke anything. So now we're going to harvest. We're going to snip it with a pair of kitchen shears. I always put it in a colander because I have to rinse them really well. Just because they're in your backyard doesn't mean there hasn't been a bug on them or maybe a squirrel ran through them. So I always wash all of my herbs. But when I'm harvesting, and this is really important, so if I let my basil just go, then I'm not going to get multiple harvests. So what I do is I snip down to where I see a bunch of leaves starting to grow, and I snip this. And that's going to encourage the plant to grow more. And don't multi-snap on the same stalk, okay? So maybe 1 snip per stalk. And then that way, you're going to have fresh basil all summer, but you're also going to have pesto and frozen basil for the rest of the year. We had a huge downpour in Toronto a couple of weeks ago, and it totally flattened the cilantro, and then it started to bolt. So I'm going to cut down to a leaf, and I'm basically cutting the top off the cilantro, and I'm going to freeze that in some water to use in soups or some of my Asian cooking. You harvest oregano the same way that you do basil, in the sense that, but you're just taking off the ends, and that's going to encourage the oregano to get thicker and grow more leaves. Last but not least is the parsley, and the same thing kind of applies, that if I cut it down to the next set of leaves, it's going to encourage another set of growth. But you have to be kind of careful, so I don't take a lot of the stalk, because sometimes I've actually cut it too much and it hasn't grown anymore. So think of it like you're doing a haircut, like you know when you used to have dolls when you were a kid, and you just sort of randomly cut their hair. It's kind of the same idea. Okay, let's go in the kitchen and wash these up. So I've rinsed them off and given them a little bit of a bath. Don't soak them in the water too long. You don't want to waterlog your herbs. And then I just shake it off. And because I love conserving water, I always throw the water in my garden. Okay, I usually walk from the kitchen, but that was fun. And then you want to spin them, and you want them, you don't want them wet. You want them fairly dry. So spin this until the centrifugal force works. Herb perfection. I've got 2 different methods for you to freeze your herbs. The first one is cinchi, but you need these silicone pans. They're genius. Once they're frozen, you're just going to pop that out. You can see that it's already in the oil, and this is basil with oil, and you pop them into little freezer packages, and that's my flavor bomb, so that when in the middle of winter when I want to make something, I just take one of these babies and bash it in there. How you make them is you can either tear up the fresh basil and just tear it into little bits. Now, when you're using this, they're going to go like kind of gushy when you're cooking, but you're getting that fabulous flavor, and that's what you're looking for. And my oregano, you can do the same thing. Now with oregano, some of the recipes that I use is I use oregano in a soup, and I might not want to add the oil, and so I might want to freeze it with water. So it's your call. You can chop it up really finely or large, whatever you want to do. I'm working fast because it's so hot out here, they're melting. And so I'm going to put the water in the oregano for one of my soups that I make. And then you're just going to throw that in the soup as is, and the water will melt. And you can either use extra virgin olive oil or canola oil, whatever one is your fave. I'm going to use canola oil in this one. I used extra virgin olive oil in the other one for my Italian cooking, but when I want to make something that's got just a really big, strong basil flavor, I would just put the canola oil in. These go into the freezer and then pop them out, and do this all summer long. So by the end of the season, you're going to have a huge bag of flavor bombs. We did the easy one. Now we're going to do the kind of upscale one. So here we go. All right. Okay. How do I look? All right, so you have elements of a pesto. Now, most pestos have cheese in it. I don't put cheese in mine because my son was lactose intolerant. And when I started doing that, I realized I didn't want to put cheese in my pesto. So I never put cheese in my pesto. You can add it at the end of whatever you're going to add pesto to. They always have nuts in them. And I don't use pine nuts, you know? No, I don't. A lot of people have got a weird allergy to pine nuts, so I don't use pine nuts. I use walnuts or I use cashews. And cashews have more protein in it, so that's kind of another reason. But you can use one or the other, and they're raw. They're not toasted. I use garlic. I use a lot of garlic because when I put a pesto into a dish, I don't put garlic in the beginning of the dish. The garlic is all coming from the pesto. It saves me work down the road. It has oil. You can either use extra virgin olive oil or canola oil, whatever you want to do. I usually use the canola oil with the walnuts, and I use the extra virgin olive oil with the cashews. And then you need some kind of green herb. So you can make pesto with parsley. You can make pesto with basil. You can make a pesto with a combination. I've even made a pesto out of arugula, so you can kind of play. And this recipe, although there's sort of a recipe, there's not really a hardcore recipe. You just kind of play with it, okay? So I'm improvising. Remember, don't improvise in baking or in canning. All right, so I'm gonna put all of this in. Now, I washed it really well, and you don't have to just pick the leaves off. This is like, so there's no food waste. You're gonna make the pesto out of the whole shebang. And I'm gonna use the cashews and all of this garlic. Me-ma, you will never have a vampire attack with all that garlic. And then I'm gonna use the extra virgin olive oil. It calls for about a half a cup, but because I really haven't measured anything else, I might have to add a bit more. And then the lid on, and contact. Okay, I'm just going to scrape it down a little bit because I don't want to have big leaves of anything showing. Hello! These are the times I know I'm really short. I'm on my tippy toes. Okay, bang that down. Contact. All right, and then because pesto is so much stronger than just the basil or the oregano and oil, I'm going to use the little tiny, these are actually for candy, they're for making chocolates, but they work really well for pesto. So we're just going to pop that in. You can make them as big or as small as you want, or you could even just lay it out on a cookie sheet if you don't have these cute little guys. But you know, they're flavor bombs. I'm trying to make them into kind of a round shape. I said bomb, not bong. Anyway, okay, so we're going to do that with all of them. You pop them in the freezer. You freeze them until they're hard, which I usually do overnight. Pop them out, put them in a bag. Don't forget to tell yourself what it is in the bag. And bingo, bango, boom! You're going to have flavor bombs from, I don't know, September all the way through to next summer, I hope. All right, happy flavor bomb making. See you next time. Remember, peace, love, and fiber. And if you watch me up here, you can click on my little face and, you know, you can become a subscriber because we have tons of giveaways for Canadian subscribers. And down there is one of my recipes from last week. And don't forget, you can always leave a comment and just say, hi, Mairlyn, or, you know, here's what I do with my flavor bombs. Just tell me. Let's have a conversation. See you next time. Bye.